Hi, I'm John Forde. Coming up next, I'll be speaking with Michael Thompson, principal of Gordon Parks Alternative High School in St. Paul. That's next on the St. Paul Forum. Welcome to the St. Paul Forum. I'm John Forde. With me today is Michael Thompson, principal of Gordon Parks Alternative High School. Welcome, Michael.
Yeah, thanks. Good to see you, John.
Alternative High School, I don't really know what that means, but before we find out, tell us about where you grew up and how you got to St. Paul.
Oh, you know, I grew up in, my family's from St. Paul originally, but I grew up in northern Minnesota, in Nisswa, Minnesota, north of Brainerd, on the north shore of Gull Lake, where my mother met my father, and he was a local and she was from St. Paul. So I grew up there, went to Brainerd High School, went to school down at McAllister, and eventually stayed in the city and taught in St. Paul for a number of years and did some administrative jobs. And this job as principal at Gordon Parks is the best job I've ever had. It's very interesting, very fun.
How long have you had the job?
This is my third year in the principal role.
Okay, yeah. And I'd like to assume that you're productive, but what makes it so fun?
The students. The students who are coming to an alternative high school. Alternative is actually a legal description in Minnesota. St. Paul Public Schools runs a couple of alternative programs, a number of them, 3 or 4 of them. We're the largest, and alternative means students have to qualify in a number of different ways. The state has 14 different criteria, and you have to meet at least one of them. And there are criteria like you're behind in school because of your sickness in your family, you got behind for other reasons, personal or judicial reasons. And so it's a legal description that students can go there if they meet those criteria, at least one of them.
Okay, and Gordon Parks is the one of 3 or 4 you said?
Yes.
And it's the largest.
It's the largest.
And it's located where?
It's at Griggs and University Avenue, right on the Green Line. In fact, we saw the train go by the other day. Everybody was excited.
And the building is spectacular.
It's a beautiful building. It was built 5 years ago. In fact, we just celebrated our 5th anniversary, along with Gordon Parks himself, 100th birthday, the celebration of his birth this year.
Tell us about your namesake, Gordon Parks, and his famous line, choice of weapons.
Gordon Parks, of course, was the great famous African-American photographer, did everything from fashion photography to civil rights work. He was a composer, a film director, a writer, a Renaissance man. He spent a number of formative years on the streets of St. Paul, literally. His family, many members of his family still live here. In fact, they're engaged with our school, and we're very happy about that. It's very nice to have that legacy. But Gordon Parks wrote a book called The Choice of Weapons, a memoir, and we use that book in our classes when we introduce students to our school. And he basically said, there's a number of weapons you can choose in your life. I chose a camera. What are you going to choose? And many of the students that come to us have chosen other weapons. That's one reason they end up in an alternative school. And so we try to use that as a centerpiece of the work that we do. There's many weapons to choose. Let's find the one that's going to get you in a positive direction.
And you use a lot of cameras at school, right? There's a media component?
We have a media component because of the Gordon Parks legacy and connection. We have actually a visiting artist in resident all the time, a photographer, who works with the students and the art teachers and a number of other teachers and projects dealing with photography and media arts. We started last year a media arts program for film production, and we kind of carved the film production lab out of one of our closets. So we can fit 6 students in there and a teacher, and we've been making films. In fact, 2 of our films just got selected for the EDU Film Festival at St. Anthony, Maine next weekend.
Wonderful.
So yeah.
Are there ventilation issues in this closet?
You know, the district is very good with the facilities people telling us what to do. So they came and fixed it.
All right. Yeah. Now, choice of weapons. I mean, I just think that's such an uplifting title. Did he itemize what the other weapons were? I mean, I assume it's stick, knife, gun, but did he mention ice cream cone? I've always thought that's a really good weapon.
Well, he was very interested in the social justice through arts, social justice through conversations and collaborations and getting to know people in different ways. Using art as a way to make those choices in your life rather than other things like sticks or ice cream cones. And so that's where he was coming from on that one.
Now, just one more thing about Gordon.
Yeah.
He's thought of as an idealist, but there was one incredibly pragmatic quote where he said, I believe he said, "I'm working for the white team."
He's working to, he said that. He did say that. And what he meant by that, from my reading, as a white guy from northern Minnesota, and working with 62% of our students are African American, large number of our staff are. We are engaged in all kinds of cross-racial conversations, and it's a very important thing for Minnesotans to do, particularly white Minnesotans. But he did say that, and what he meant by that was, I need to have people understand how the power structure goes, so that we can participate in that power structure and change it for the better of people in a social justice manner. So it wasn't like he was saying, I'm going to go work for the guys with the white sheets. It was more like, we need to understand how this works, and we need to make the changes in it necessary to make us all be participating in this society as Americans.
Now, tell me about the school itself. How's the gender balance?
We're about 52% male and about 48% female.
Okay. And how important is that as an alternative school? Are there alternative schools that are more out of balance, and how does that affect?
Yeah, there's boys in general, as we know from research across the country in high schools and younger, have more problems with school than girls. Problems with school. And so they're generally about that. We're pretty balanced. It's not too bad. There's slightly more guys than girls. Like I say, we're way out of balance in terms of our racial component. The district itself is about 33% African American students. We're about 62 to 63. That tells you some things about issues within our school system that's going on in our society, not just our school system. Who's having issues with the traditional system.
And that's partly the achievement gap, and I would like to get to the achievement gap, but I also understand there's a way in which your school is slightly unexpected, and that's the age demographic, that there's a big bulge at like 18, 19.
Yes, we're since students come to us from other high schools in St. Paul, in Minneapolis, around the state, as well as from out of state, in many cases they're older students. In fact, we don't take students who are under 16. So when I have a handful of 16-year-olds right now, I probably have 7 or 8.
Wow, okay.
So we're mostly 18-year-olds. The vast majority of our students are 18. A big handful of 17-year-olds. We have a few 19-year-olds, and I actually have a few 20 and 21-year-olds. We have to kick them out when they turn 21 during the school year. At the end of that year, then they're done under Minnesota law.
So you could be 21.9 and still be...
Yeah,
okay.
Depending on when you were born.
Yeah, okay, yeah, okay. And how many total students in the school?
Right now I have 342 students.
Okay, and it's 2 shifts, correct?
And we have 2 shifts because we're a small building. We can fit about 200 kids at a time. And because it's a small building. It's a beautiful building, like you mentioned before, a LEED certified energy efficient building right on University Avenue. 200 kids at a time in the building. So I have a shift in the morning with about 190, and I have a smaller shift in the afternoon. And then evening high school. We collaborate with the evening high school crew who comes in at 3:30 in the afternoon, 3:10 in the afternoon, and starts evening high school. And our kids take a lot of those classes. They go till 8:30. So our building is in use from 7:30 in the morning until 9 o'clock at night.
It's getting it's very efficient in that sense. Yeah. Tell me about the achievement gap.
Well, the achievement gap is racially identifiable. We can make predictions about students' performance based on their race. And Minnesota actually has the largest academic achievement gap between black students and white students of any state in the country. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. One of the reasons is that our high end is so high that our gap's going to look larger. But there's some serious racial equity issues that we need to work on as a state and as a school district. I'm actually proud of our district for doing the work. We're doing some very direct work in that area. But it's a racially identifiable gap. We can make predictions based on people's color of their skin more than we can on any other factor. There are poverty gaps and other things too, which of course influence kids, and race isn't the only thing. But that's what it is in Minnesota. It's the largest racial achievement gap in the country. And we're working right in the center of that gap, because many of our students come to us needing the skills practice, the reading and writing and literacy practice that for some reason they haven't gotten. And there's many, many reasons for it.
But the point of measurement is the school. By achievement, they mean intellectual achievement.
They mean academic achievement, and right now they mean intellectual achievement based, academic achievement based on a set of standardized tests.
Yeah.
Right.
But so much of it is beyond the school's control. It's hunger and it's time control and things like that. All those things get lopped onto the school's plate.
Yeah. And yes, and you're correct. We at the school have to start being very precise, and we try to do this in our building, and we do it with varying degrees of success because we're learning together. And nobody has a secret to this yet. And Minnesota's not the only place with a gap. We just happen to have a big one. But the bottom line is that we at school have to figure out what it is that we can do, and we have to do that better. Because there's a lot of things we can do. There's a lot of research about the most important influence in a student's education is the teacher. We know that. Those other things are vitally important as well, and they're all up there, and you can have all kinds of arguments about, you know, it's 13% the teacher and 12.5% the parents and 17% the bus ride on the way to school. But the bottom line is we at school, we're paid as professionals to make some professional decisions and reach out to our students and try to do what we can at that point to do it. So that's why I think when we have the conversation about achievement gap in schools, we don't want to let ourselves off the hook, but we do need to acknowledge that poverty and those other issues that we have no control over are influencing that, but we want to influence what we can influence.
How much is there a parenting deficit amongst your students?
Our parents care about what our students are doing, but their lives are not always in order in the way that they might want to have it too. A lot of jobs, a lot of unemployment. The folks are working really hard. They love their kids. They come up when they can. They're just not around every day. And we're also talking about older students. And we're also talking about how half of our students aren't even living with their parents.
That's kind of what I was driving at.
Yeah.
Nearly half.
Yeah, nearly half.
And where are they living?
Well, we deal with homeless issues every week. One instance, we have five or six homeless issues every week that my social worker deals with, helps kids find housing, places to stay, shelters sometimes. So we deal with that. A lot of kids are living on their own or living with cousins, other relatives, other friends. When they're living with friends, we sometimes have a problem because there's not a lot of, if you're living with a bunch of 19-year-olds and you're not in college, and even if you are in college, you know you're going to have some issues sometimes.
Yeah.
And so we're dealing with that. We deal with that all the time. It's like, well, I was with my cousin, or I was here. And some of our kids live with their parents too. So it's a real mix. We're not like a regular traditional high school in which you can sort of count on having a PTO or a PTA organization to come in and run something for you. We don't do that. We try to do outreach with our parents in many different ways. We have a series of community dinners, for instance, rather than having regular parent-teacher conferences. We have teachers there, and we bring people in. We're thinking about moving those around the city since our kids come from all over the city too, not always have them at school.
Now, it sounds like that's very heavy lifting with half the students not living with their parents, but I've been to the school and it seems happy. I mean, you guys either doing great work or there's something in the food. Now,
there ain't nothing in the food. Aside from really good nutrition, I can say that.
Yeah. But do the kids get food early, or is it just lunch, or?
We've served all students in St. Paul get free breakfast.
Okay.
So kids can come in we start at school at 8. Classes start. We get them there. They can come as early as 7:30. Sometimes they get there earlier, and the breakfast guys there serving breakfast. And then we now have a hot lunch. We've had a hot lunch for a year and a half. We did a big campaign with our students to get hot lunch. We're such a small building. We weren't at first. They say, "Oh, you're too small. We can't have hot lunches." So they're giving us these peanut butter sandwiches or something. And it's not that good. So and we serve breakfast and lunch.
And that probably makes an enormous difference when students have a little calories in there to keep them focused.
Yeah, that's very important. A lot of our kids are hungry. They're asking me and everybody else for food all the time. And you know, they're also adolescents.
Yeah.
So it's not just poverty.
Okay.
But the biggest thing about the atmosphere of the building is, and something I'm really proud of with our students and teachers in the past 3 years, is we've done an intentional and concerted effort to change the feeling of the building. Traditionally, and I've been in a zillion alternative learning center schools across the state and the country, and traditionally there's a lot of kids come to those schools for negative reasons. They got kicked out of the other school.
Yeah.
They've been out of school for a few years. Their engagement with school wasn't what it should have been, or something happened that wasn't good in their life because now they qualify. Okay, so we deal with that immediately at the beginning, and so if you don't deal with that straight up front and try to change the atmosphere and try to stand alongside the kid rather than in opposition, because that's what they think they're going to get.
Yeah.
Because their relationship with adults in many cases, and particularly adults in institutional situations, police departments, teachers, is negative. Sometimes parents, it's even negative. So we've done a concerted effort to change that, and we actually wrote a manifesto that said, and we had some support and some challenges from the community to say, you know, when we walk into your building, it doesn't feel friendly, and people told us that. So we did some very specific things to change that, because I told them, I don't like hearing that, and it's annoying to me that you have to tell me that, and I might not like being told that, but I'm going to listen to you, and we're going to do something about it. So we did some very specific things. We wrote a manifesto. The manifesto basically says, we will treat every student and visitor that walks in this building with unconditional positive regard, regardless of where you're coming from. And we want to be treated the same way. So we're trying to live that up. So we changed the way that we greet people. We did a lot of stuff we call working in pro-social ways, teaching kids how to be pro-social with each other rather than adversarial with us. We are not 100% successful every day. We are dealing with adolescents, and we're dealing with kids that do have a chip on their shoulder sometimes, for good reasons. But we've managed to change the atmosphere. And some of them are really simple things like building a feeling of team camaraderie, which I sound like a military or some sports thing, but that's really important for kids, particularly in alternative learning centers, schools, when they think they are not a part of anything, they really do want to be a part of something. So doing that. Music, we have music playing all the time downstairs. We have piano, I think you saw the piano, which is a grand piano, and kids are playing it all the time, and it changes. When somebody's playing music on the piano for live, you don't have fights.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah,
It just doesn't work.
And I know one of the things that you're really proud of is your attendance rate, because at alternative schools, it's shockingly low across the country, and Gordon Parks is significantly above that.
We are alternative learning center schools in Minnesota and across the country have an attendance rate of about 48 to 50%. So about half the kids show up. Now, granted, that is one of the reasons they end up in alternative education.
Yeah.
Because they weren't going over to Central or to High when they weren't going to school. And so we were able to get I'm a little frustrated with the attendance rate right now.
Okay.
It being spring, but also.
Choice of weapons. I think ice cream, bring them in.
Yeah, there you go. We do that sometimes.
Okay.
So we were able to push our attendance rate up about 25 points to about 72, 73%. We're hovering around 70 right now. So every day we got 7/10 of our kids there. The challenge is we've sort of plateaued. So we're working on, I got some ideas for next year. I was just talking to my director about some ideas for some real attendance initiatives we want to do. Now this has been an ongoing problem for decades in alternative education. So I don't have rose-colored glasses, and we did make a significant increase in what we did in the first 3 years. Some of that comes from reaching out. Some of it comes from holding the kids accountable and not treating them like they're invisible, which sometimes happens in our big high schools. Oh, they're not here, I don't really notice them, and they're not a problem if they're not here. And these kids can be problems sometimes. Challenging kids with all kinds of different ways of looking at the world. And some of it could be the way that we're teaching. So a lot of people will take a facile approach in the reform movement and go, oh, if the kids would all show up and they'd all be wonderful if those teachers would teach differently. So whenever I hear that word just in terms of school reform, I kind of tune out.
Yeah.
So that's a little problem I have.
Assume the big part's fixed.
Yeah, exactly. But that we know that's a challenge too. We want to teach in different ways, so they do want to be there. That's not going to solve all of it. So we're trying to do all of them.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you to do my job, because I got 2 questions and I can't tell which one to ask first.
Okay.
So which would you like to address first? One question is, how much autonomy do you have as a principal? And the other is, how much do you have to adhere to standards? I mean, you are teaching sort of a standard curriculum: math, language, history.
Right.
Yeah.
Number one, we have I have a very supportive boss in the central office downtown, St. Paul. We have a superintendent who is very interested in creative ways out of the box thinking.
I sense that you're about to say I have more autonomy than I'm supposed to.
I probably do have more autonomy than I'm supposed to. I shouldn't say that on TV, but that's what. And some of that is because in the legislation that created alternative education in Minnesota in the 70s, they wrote the legislation, and it says the districts that take money from the state, taxpayers, to provide alternative routes for kids to graduate, those have to be alternative to the traditional program.
Okay.
So so when I get flack, I just bring out the legislation.
Okay. Yeah.
It says we got to be different.
Yeah.
So that said, the kids have to graduate having studied or mastered to whatever level the state is requiring the standards that the state has set. We have a lot of flexibility as to how we do that. We do have more flexibility than other places. Hence, we can have that split program. We have kids in the school itself, shorter hours, but they're working and doing other things that we're giving them credit for. We were able to do a lot of community connections because of that schedule. So yeah, I feel blessed about that. And because of the current sort of movement in American education is sort of centralizing everything. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There's some equity reasons and stuff for that. But for the most part, I think we're good to be able to think for ourselves and try to make some changes ourselves.
Now, when students come to you, they're significantly behind on their credit
They're
schedule.
at least a year behind, or test scores are depressed, or whatever else. Yeah.
And so since they don't have to finish at 18, that's really what makes it possible for many of them to graduate at all.
That is correct.
Yeah, okay.
So we had 122 graduates like that last year. And we have 2 graduation ceremonies, one in June and one in August. And one thing, American culture is so set up that graduation happens at a certain time, and it's like one of those sort of turning points in people's lives in the USA. So our kids feel that, even though they try to be, we're tough and, whatever. They want to graduate on time. Grandma wants to come to town to see you graduate.
Yeah.
But I have to tell the kids all the time, I'm counseling kids every day, and so are our counselors, this is not a race. Education is not a race. And something happened, maybe it was caused by your behavior, or maybe it was something happened in your family, or you just had bad luck, or somebody got sick, but something happened, so you're behind, but you're not really behind because it's not a race. And we'll get you to college, or we'll get you to work if you work with us. So what we really would like to be, we like to be a high school that runs like a community college, with a lot of connections to the community itself.
How much does technology, I assume a lot of the kids have smartphones, and that's true at every school, but at an alternative school especially. How do you deal with that? Do you have to turn it off most of the day, or? Yeah,
it's illegal to have cell phone blockers, but I would like to buy one.
Okay.
Don't say that out loud either, but you can get them in China. The cell phones are a curse and a blessing. We're all addicted to our phones. You probably are too. I am. You and I text back and forth when we were setting this up. Our students are particularly obsessed with their telephones. And that is a problem for kids, particular kids in alternative ed, because they're already behind, and they already have some challenges with being able to focus. And so right now our rule is turn off your phone when the class starts, and turn it on at the end of class at whenever the day ends. We have all kinds of challenges with that. We are not alone in that across the country. Everybody's challenged by that. In the long run, our school district and other districts want to have what they call a BYOD approach, a bring your own device approach, because these are smartphones. And so, but right now I don't think that we have not taught our students the etiquette yet. And when I talk to college professors, they're saying the college kids are the same way. So the phone rings in the middle of class, they're answering their phone. So we're trying to teach them the etiquette, but right now we're saying, put the phone away. We'll take it away from you for the hour or for the rest of the day. You can pick it up. We've never lost a phone. And I also tell kids, if your phone is stolen in this school, I feel sorry for you, but I'm not going to go out of my way because I told you not to bring it, or I told you to keep it in your pocket.
Yeah.
And so that sounds harsh. We cracked down on phones about 18 months ago. One of the side benefits of doing that, we had a dramatic reduction in the number of fights. We haven't had a fight for 14 months. And alternative learning kids are famous for getting in fights.
Yeah, sure.
So, you know why? Because the phones are not used as learning tools right now by the kids. They're learned as social media.
They're about turf.
They're about turf.
Overlapping turf, and now we got to duke it out. And,
whatever pathologies that teenagers already have in their lives in terms of how they communicate with each other is multiplied by Facebook. And I like Facebook. Facebook, Twitter, and all those things. And so we were getting kids getting into conflicts with each other during the school day because they're on their phone insulting each other, and then you have a fight outside the building. We clamped down really hard on the fights, and I think it's a side benefit. We've had to increase the number of kids earning credits because they're paying more attention. We're forcing them to.
Yeah.
And then we've had a dramatic decrease in the number of those confrontations. Now, it still happens. We still get complaints sometimes. Some kid said this on Facebook. And And but what kids are addicted. It's like, well, then defriend them. Well, I'm not going to do that. I want to know what they're saying.
Well, Michael, this interview has rocketed along. We only have about 3 minutes left, and I know we wanted to touch on the major issues facing the school reform movement. What do you think are the best initiatives out there?
Oh, in terms of the school reform over the past 20 years or so? I think the number one thing that I would say is organizing teachers in different ways so that they can work together in collaborative groups rather than just the traditional high school is shares a there's a saying in the school reform movement. It says like traditional high schools have 100 freelancers who share a common parking lot.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's one of the benefits of the school reform movement has been bringing teachers together in what they call professional learning communities. And I think in the long run, all this stuff about testing and all this other stuff that other countries don't really do and get better results than us, we're probably going to get to a point where we start realizing it's building the trust between our adults and building the atmosphere in school if we're going to continue having brick and mortar buildings, which we will for a long time. That's more important than new tests. That's where I'm at anyway, and that's what we can see in our school. Our kids do better on the tests when we start paying attention to the trust levels between the adults in the building as well as between the kids and the adults. So reorganizing teachers' days and the way that they work together.
And I know one of the things that we should talk about is the sense of security that your students have. What can you do at the school to help them with that?
Well, that's one reason that we wanted to be really intentional about our atmospherics and our pro-social approaches and the way that we talk to each other, even as they enter the building. We have a security guard because we're right on a very busy street. Because we actually have people walking in there all the time who aren't our students. Like, who are they? So we have that going on. But I think the sense of security in buildings, we talk to the kids all the time about you need to have a safe space at least part of your day. I can't control what happens to you at home, what happens on the bus. They take public transportation to our building. So we try really hard to make that building safe. And sometimes we may be over strict. Get out of here, I don't want to hear that kind of language. But we try to cut that stuff off so that it has a safe feeling and atmosphere. We're not always successful. We still have conflicts sometimes.
But outside the building, you have a social worker who helps the kids feel safe 24/7.
Yeah.
Because if there's something really bugging them at midnight, it's going to affect them all day long.
Yeah, and she does a lot of work like that, and a lot of outreach like that. She's not on the phone with them all at 2 in the morning all the time, but
I would think that would be very heavy lifting.
Yeah, and we have a wonderful social worker, and we have 2 counselors. We're actually very blessed by our district with the staff that's, in terms of numbers, is commensurate to what we need.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Yeah.
We only have about a minute left, but we want to plug your website.
Yeah.
What is your website?
Gordon Parks. What is our website?
Well, it's up there on the screen now.
Yeah, it's up on the screen.
Okay.
Type in that, or you can just type in Gordon Parks High School, St. Paul Public Schools.
That's what I keep doing.
I would really like to have people take a look at some of our videos on that website that the students have made.
Because they are beautiful.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the one with the students talking about what it means to be an alternative learning student and the perceptions that people have of them, and their own perceptions of themselves, which we are working to change. It's generally negative. I'm stupid, I can't succeed, I had to come over here. So we're trying to change that.
Well, Michael, you are doing amazing work. Thank you for the interview, and thank you for all the work you do at Gordon Parks.
Thank you, John. Good to see you.
All right, good to see you.
Bye.
That's all we have time for. Come join us again next week on the St. Paul Forum.